Well, as you can imagine, the world's papers today are focusing on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, particularly the victims. And we've got Deeptika Laurent with us on the set to tell us a bit more about that. Deepti.
Well, let's show you the front page of the Times today, Jeannie. It's a victim of Russia's brutal bombardment of Kharkiv. Journalist Anthony Lloyd, who writes this article, writes that better than any military map, their mutilated skin and ripped flesh, I quote, best charts the progress of Russia's campaign, airstrikes, surface-to-surface missiles, and artillery fire. You see that graphic photo there. This woman is Yelena Bolyachenko. She's a 55-year-old sales manager who was blown to the walls of her home after an explosion in Kharkiv. She's been partially blinded now. The article talks about another victim who lost his leg, another woman who had to give birth during a blackout, aided only by the lights of her cell phone. And the stories are quite horrific. The French paper Le Figaro also pays tribute today to the Ukrainians who are uniting in their resistance. Despite Russia's military superiority, civilians are mobilizing at all levels, the paper says. It might not prevent Russia from winning the war, but it will compromise Russia's attempts to, quote, enslave Ukrainians.
Deepti, the Illustrated Press is focusing on Russia's offer of a humanitarian corridor leading to Russia or Belarus that we were talking so much about yesterday.
And that was obviously angrily rejected by the Ukrainians. It's sort of being sent up by the Illustrated Press today perhaps for its ludicrousy. For the Times cartoonist Morten Morland, he sees Ukrainians in a corridor there that's getting smaller and smaller, like kind of like Alice in Wonderland, a passageway that's more of a trap, he says. And there's also the allusion to the criticism of the British government for their perceived lack of humanity towards Ukrainian refugees. The Daily Telegraph's cartoonist Patrick Blower, he sees that corridor more as sort of a corridor to hell, guarded by Russian soldiers. That hell there leading to the letter, represented by the letter Z in the far distance.
Now, speaking of that letter Z, you've actually found an article about a controversial hand gesture that's said to indicate support of Russia's war.
Well, it is that hand gesture in the form of the letter Z, Jeannie. It all sort of came to light when a 20-year-old Russian gymnast recently displayed a sort of handmade Z symbol on his shirt. It sparked outrage because the letter Z is not just a letter of the alphabet. It's sort of now becoming a public symbol of devotion to Vladimir Putin and support for the Russian war in Ukraine. The letter Z initially it was just sort of marked out on a Russian military division, and now it's sort of been appropriated and subverted, mythologized as sort of war propaganda across Russia, but also in Belarus too. What fate now awaits the Z, that's a big question. Will it be used as a sort of to create a culture of intimidation and fear, a symbol of the totalitarian regime, much like the Nazi swastika symbol? That remains to be seen.
Women in particular are paying a very heavy price in the war in Ukraine, and a lot of papers are paying tribute to that today on this International Women's Day.
Health workers, activist Ukrainian mothers forced to give birth in basements. The French paper L'Humanité pays tribute today to all of us women. Nous toutes, it says on its front page. Peace is not possible without women, the editors of L'Humanité say. There's a really nice front page from the Italian daily La Stampa. They pay tribute to all the women of Ukraine on its front page, like Maria, who was photographed taking her 18-month-old son into a Mariupol hospital. He later died. Or Amelia, a little girl hiding in a Kyiv basement where a video of her singing Let It Go from Frozen went viral. The paper dedicating their edition to all the women of Ukraine today. The Swiss paper Le Temps also looks at this International Women's Day in the shadows of war. This picture is a picture of a woman who's just given birth in a Kyiv hospital basement. This International Women's Day is a moment to pay tribute to the historic fight of all women for their survival, be it in Ukraine or Russia or Yemen or Syria, the paper says.
Deepti, just to stay with that theme of women to wrap up, the Telegraph's looking at another Ukrainian woman, the First Lady, who's been a real key player in keeping morale high on social media.
Well, she sort of emerged from the shadows as sort of wife of a politician to this leading figure now, Jeannie. Olena Zelenska, she was mostly known as the wife of the president before the war started. She's now risen to this key role in the government's social media campaign to document the horrific realities of Putin's war. Her social media posts are really unfiltered, families torn apart, babies dying, horror injuries sustained. She documents it all. This week she also launched a Telegram channel to provide verified information to Ukrainian citizens, giving them advice on how to help in the war effort, where to evacuate, how to evacuate. She sort of donned the mantle of mother of the nation. That's what the Telegraph says. And it's even earned her comparisons to Michelle Obama.